It is my pleasure, after all this time, to come back to you. And I want to thank you. Great many of you have asked for us to come back. And we are slowly reviving back again. But it is my greatest pleasure to bring back somebody you may remember. He's had his own program with ETM, and with me is Mr. Phil Cornish, the lawyer. He will host the program himself. Why? Because he is very capable, very able. This is a lawyer of some 30 years who looks at life a little more seriously. And I'd like to think that he is an asset to you, because he will break down the news for you. He will break down that understanding that you must have. You've heard all kinds of things from all kinds of media, and yet you don't know what the truth is. Phil, it is my awesome pleasure to welcome you, sir, and go ahead and talk to your audience.
All right, thank you again, Dan. It's my pleasure to be here. And I'm Phil Cornish, and I'm your host of a new program called Cornish Talks Common Sense. What is this program about? The idea of this program, which I should just start by thanking ETM for helping to facilitate it, and Dan and the crew who are helping with that. This is a new program that is designed to deal with important current issues that are happening in our society today from a perspective that is grounded in evidence and truth, and covering topics that are important to you and to those who have an interest in the welfare and the well-being of our society. So I want to start by talking to you about a few points that underlie what I'm hoping to do. So in this program, I want to talk about three underlying concepts that tell us a lot about why we are at the place we are in the world today. And I want to speak to you about these three underlying points so that we can understand why the issues that are happening and unfolding in our lives today are happening the way they are. Things like war that's happening in Ukraine, things like critical race theory, things like the promotion of climate change control efforts, government spending and debt. These are all critical issues that are happening in our society today that mean a lot more than you may think about what happens in your daily life. And the starting point for understanding this has to do with the worldview that each of us has. Every one of us has a worldview, a belief system of how we function in our day-to-day life, how we make decisions the way we do, how we behave the way we do. It's all based on underlying principles that govern how we orient our life based on what we believe and how we conduct ourselves. So, what are the underlying principles that tell us about why we are at the place we are in the world today? Well, let me start with the first of those. The first of those I want to talk to you about is the advent of postmodernism. Well, what is that? You've probably heard the word postmodernism before. It's something that's been used now for a number of decades. And it's something that can mean different things to different people, which is ironic, because I want to tell you about what postmodernism is. Postmodernism fundamentally is the idea that there is no longer any objective truth. So if there is no such thing that's accepted any longer as being objective truth, then how do we know what is truth? And what postmodernism does is it tells you that what you subjectively believe is the truth to you. It's your truth, it's valid as your truth, and what I accept as my subjective truth is valid as my truth, and we're all right. We're all okay. We just all have our own subjective idea of what truth is. And so postmodernism simply says there is no single one correct objective viewpoint out there that exists any longer. Everybody has their own notion, their own idea of what is right for them. How did that come about? Well, that came about in conjunction with another idea called deconstructionism. And deconstructionism is an idea that was promoted by a French philosopher named Jacques Derrida, who basically said that when we read, when we use language, what it means is what it just means to you as the reader. There's not one interpretation, there's not one right way of viewing it. Every one of us is able to form our own interpretation of what is the truth and what is right, and that makes it okay. And that's really at its essence what postmodernism is. And so how does that change what has historically occurred throughout history? So historically, in Western civilization, we've accepted Judeo-Christian principles as the foundation of our society, of how our civilization came to be as it is. And when we think of those principles that we derive from Judeo-Christian values, that of course comes from what we would know as the Bible. And so historically, the idea is we can get objective truth because objective truth comes from a authoritative text, the Bible, from the idea that there is a God who authored that text. And so that idea now has gone to the wayside. Today, our thinking largely is governed by the idea that God is irrelevant to what we do as humans today. We make our own truths, we make our own values. What is right to each of us subjectively in our own viewpoint. And that's the idea of postmodernism. And when we look at that, that helps to inform us of why today some of these issues that are arising in society that have led to some dissension, some confusion over morality, over proper values, values that we can trust as believing they're right, that now becomes impossible because we are all right in our own way, and there's no longer any objective truth. So that's the first underlying premise of what is happening in our society today. So let's just take a break for a moment right there, and I'll be right back to talk about the second one.